It's the Clarence-Rockland Guide. I'm Derrick Scott from Hot Country 92.5 along with Marc Bastien from Bastien Physiotherapy. Welcome to the Clarence-Rockland Guide.
Thank you for having me.
What exactly is physiotherapy?
Well, physiotherapy can be a lot of things. I guess it depends on the physiotherapist that's delivering it. But essentially, if you're having difficulty participating in different daily activities, sports that you want to play because of physical limitations, physiotherapist is usually the one that you would go see to help, improve mobility, flexibility, strength, all that fun stuff to, make sure that you're not missing out on the things that you enjoy doing. That's essentially physiotherapy in a nutshell.
What got you into physiotherapy?
So myself, I was pretty young and I knew that I wanted to be a physiotherapist. So I got back surgery when I was 14 and I got 2 rods inserted into my spine and I had to do quite extensive rehab to go back to my sports and things like that. I didn't actually follow a physiotherapist, which is the ironic part. I kind of just did it all myself through training, and my brother was a gymnast, so he'd help me with my core stuff, and my other brother was also a hockey player, so he'd help me with that stuff. And that just developed kind of like an interest in my 14-year-old self to maybe this is the type of career that I would want to pursue. And every decision I made from there on end and led me to eventually becoming a physiotherapist in 2015.
So at the age of 14, you knew your path, which is pretty admirable because there are people in their 20s, 30s, even 40s that are still trying to discover what they want to do and what their passion is.
Yeah, I consider myself very lucky in that regard because, like applying to university, I knew what programs I needed. It just made my whole education process much more simpler. As an older self, you often look back and say, oh, maybe I could have, considered other career opportunities, which I'm sure I would have been happy in other fields as well. But physiotherapy is a very rewarding field. You're helping people every day. You're socializing all day. You're not sitting at a desk. You're exercising with people that are trying to overcome some barriers. So I'm very lucky, and I consider myself blessed to be part of this profession.
Physiotherapy obviously goes hand in hand, as you mentioned, with sports. Did you play a lot of sports when you were young?
Yeah, so I was a hockey player, competitive hockey player. I loved track and field, so I was a mid-distance runner. I would also do some long distance, and as I got older, I kind of started diving into various things. So last year of high school, I joined the swim team. I had never been in a swim team before, and I liked that. And during university, I did some triathlons. So I've been immersed in many different sports, and which probably led me to becoming more of like a sports enthusiast physiotherapist. So I tend to treat all my clients like they're athletes and try to get everybody moving as much as possible. So I love sports, big sports guy.
What university did you attend?
University of Ottawa for both my undergrad and my master's degree. So I was there for about 6 years, and when I graduated, I just stayed here. I had met my now wife, and we settled in the Clarence-Rockland region.
So you wanted to stay in the area?
Yeah. So my wife being from the area and me being originally from Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario is it resembles Northern Ontario in quite a few different ways, and I had some family in Rockland, and we just I really enjoyed the area here, so I figured, why not settle some roots here, and here we are 7 years later, and still living here, running my business here, raising my kids here, and it's a great place to be.
Do you remember your first job, your first opportunity as a physiotherapist prior to launching your business?
Yeah, so I was working out of a physiotherapy clinic in Ottawa, and it was pretty, standard physiotherapy clinic, a lot of physiotherapists working there, a very successful place, and it was a good place to start because there was a lot of mentors there that helped me as a clinician early on. And I worked there as an assistant while I was studying, and it was just kind of like an easy transition for me into the profession. And I worked there for about 2 years, and then eventually I decided to open my small practice, and they were also very supportive of me. So that first experience was a very good one.
Did you know all along that you eventually wanted to own your own business?
Yes. So even before I started university, my friends from high school often still talk about it. How I used to always say that I'd want to open my own physiotherapy clinic, and so when I graduated and I started working, I started noticing that I tend to have different approach to certain things, and I found it a little difficult for me at first to find an environment that I could, work with under my true values and what I wanted to do. And the opportunity came up for me to rent an office in Bourget, um, and the rest is history. A lot of people were telling me like, "Oh, don't open an office in Bourget. It's too small of a town. It's not going to succeed." But I just figured, why not? Worst case, I'll rent the space for a couple of years, work as a physio, and uh, everything worked out. And now we're at two locations in Bourget and Rockland, and it's been great.
Why do you think your business has flourished so much to have two locations now?
Yeah, I think the one of the main things, I think one of the reasons I wanted to start my office was to have more time with clients, and it was never really to make a ton of money. Like obviously, as an entrepreneur, you want, like, financially, you wanted to support your family and things like that. But for me, it was just to be able to take the time that I need with my clients and not have people telling me under what format I need to work. And I think that just led to I to the community receiving me very well. I moved to that community. Bourget is a community that tends to support local quite a bit, and they welcome me with open arms, and I think they appreciate the fact that I take my time with them. I'm not rushed. They come into the clinic, they don't feel like a number, and that just translated to more people being referred to me. Eventually, a demand started developing in Rockland. More people were coming here, and we developed a great relationship with one of the local gyms, and so we rent a space out of their gym now, and it's just been great. And we've been received very well by the local community, and hopefully it continues in that trend.
I think it's great that you've broken the stigma that's out there when it comes to health, medicine, physiotherapy, that any of the specialists rush their patients.
Mm-hmm.
You've dispelled that you do take your time with your clients and your customers compared to bigger city outlets where they're under the gun.
Mm-hmm.
Time limit.
Yeah, and I think that's something it's just become very common. And when it comes to healthcare businesses, like physiotherapy clinics, for example, it's tough to find that balance where, like, you need to bill a certain amount of money per day to keep your doors open, but you also don't want to start sacrificing quality of care, and it's very easy to do that. And for me, it's just to offer good quality means taking your time with the clients and making sure that they don't feel rushed in that environment, and it's just been received very well. And I think if much to the advice of a lot of coaches and mentors, they all recommend that I speed things up a little bit. But I think it just comes down to what are your objectives in terms of being an entrepreneur. Like, what was my initial goal? It was to treat my local community and to offer a service that I felt met my values, and I plan on sticking to that. And I've been lucky to build a team around me that also shares those same values and does a great job at delivering services in a way that the local community has loved so far. So, yeah.
You certainly do stay true to your values. You've mentioned the term values a few times. Obviously, service, supporting your local community. What other core values are important to Marc Bastien?
Well, when it comes to, I think just overall health and quality of life, I think it's for me, that's super important, and I tend to keep that in mind in every decision, not just in my business, but I try to build the business in a way that allows me to enjoy my life outside the business as well. I've got a young family, and I want to make sure that I save some time for them, and that's something that I want to relay to my patients as well. And it just comes down to in order to maximize people's quality of life from a physiotherapy standpoint, in my opinion, it comes down to educating them and giving them the tools that they need to take control of things and not have to be too dependent on coming to see me all the time. And I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess that would be making sure that, we maintain a healthy quality of life. That's a big value for me.
Where do you see your business in 5 years from now?
That's a very good question. Initially, if we look at just the name of the business, Bastien Physiotherapy, that started as Marc Bastien offering physiotherapy services in Bourget. I do envision that there will be a rebrand at some point. Marc Bastien is no longer the only player, and physiotherapy is no longer our only service. So probably in the next few years, there will be a rebrand of our business. But I think, the standard answer to that question would be to continue growing and to grow the business as much as we can. And I see it more as an efficiency play, and I'd like to make, the business that I have now, just make it more efficient, make it so that we can continue helping our local community, keep building the team in a way that complements what the community needs and what our values are, and just making sure that we stay true to those values as we grow. Maybe further down the road have more locations in Eastern Ontario, but I do like the idea of just continuing to treat like small rural areas, because that was a big need for me as a kid. Like one of the reasons I didn't do physiotherapy after my surgery was we didn't have access to it very easily. So, to be able to, offer a high quality physiotherapy service to small local communities, I think would be one of my main objectives going forward.
Has the demand for physiotherapy really increased over the years? Because I see a number of physiotherapy outlets where, if I were to think back 15, 20 years ago, there weren't that many.
Yeah, I'd say over the last 5 years, last decade, I would say, we've started seeing some more physiotherapy clinics popping up. Like if we look at like in Ottawa, for example, there seems to be more physiotherapy clinics than there are McDonald's or Tim Hortons. And what I think is great, I think, when it comes to healthcare, every clinician will have their type of approach. Every patient requires a different type of approach. And I think the more the merrier. And I think over time as well, people are just becoming more educated regarding living a healthy life. And physiotherapy is a field that tends to, the scope of practice continues to increase, and our role isn't just, in terms of increasing strength and mobility. There's physiotherapists that work with, post-stroke clientele. There's pediatric physiotherapists. There's cancer rehab physiotherapists, burn units. Physiotherapy is a profession that I think is adapting really well to the population. And the more clinics there are, the more people are healthy, and I'm all for it.
And do you think it could be because nowadays people are taking care of themselves and they want to take care of the pain maybe that they could be going through, that they realize through education that they don't need to suffer, that they can seek out help?
Yeah, for sure. I think that plays a big role, and I think it all comes down to the education of the population. And with social media now, it's so easy to access information, and I think people are just more aware of things that they can do. If you look at a lot of jobs out there, especially in this area with the government and the teachers, they typically come with good coverage for physiotherapy. But overall, I think people are just more aware of what can be done, and they're aware that they don't need to sit there and live with their pain. There's a lot of things that can be done, and I think it's great, and I think it's as a business owner in that field, I'm very encouraged and motivated to continue to help and adapt with the population, and also as a member of the community, I think it's important to have access to those healthcare services.
So take me through an example. I'll give you an example for someone who may not be familiar with physiotherapy, if they may need it, what they need to do. My shoulders have been bugging me for months. Someone mentioned you should get physiotherapy. Do they go to their doctor right away and get a referral? How does it typically work?
The old way was you'd be referred from your doctor and then you'd go see the physiotherapist. But
you said the old way.
Yeah. So nowadays, physiotherapists are considered primary healthcare providers. So you don't need a referral from your doctor to come see us. That typically depends on the insurance provider that you have. but it's very rare now that you see an insurance provider require a referral from the doctor. So typically all you would need to do is, pull up Google and look for physiotherapy near me. The
And
way,
your name will pop up on
well,
it.
hopefully, if you live in Bourget or Rockland, yes. But the way it would work at our clinic is you would speak to our lovely office administrator, Anne, and she would help find a time that works well with you, and you would schedule an initial assessment with the physiotherapist. And at that appointment, we complete a full assessment of what's going on, give you an idea of what's happening with your shoulders, and once that's done, we can figure out a plan to help reduce the discomfort, get you moving, and most importantly, just getting you doing the things that you love again. Because we don't realize how much we use our shoulders until our shoulders hurt. So that's kind of how it works, and then the follow-ups depend on the frequency depends on everyone and what is done and all that fun stuff. But yeah,
Must be really rewarding to you and your team where you help out a client and you see them down the road and their quality of life has improved. They're back to doing what they love.
yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the main reasons that I was so attracted to this field. And one of my specialties is concussion management. So that's an injury that a lot of people typically, not only does it impair their ability to function, but they tend to isolate as well. So a lot of my clients that I see and that I follow up with, years after they've received treatment, and it's really rewarding to see them, where they came from, where they've gotten, and I think that's something sometimes we tend to lose sight of. When you're in the grind of the daily, trying to help people. One of the things they don't mention about being a physiotherapist is that it's also a very emotionally heavy profession. You're dealing with people that are in pain on a daily basis, and typically when we're in pain, we're not in the best mood. But if you take a moment to really step back and look at the amount of impact that you've had in people's lives as a physiotherapist, it really creates an amazing profession to be a part of, and I wouldn't see myself doing anything else.
Who needs Google when you've got the Clarence-Rockland guide? How do people get a hold of you?
So they can find me on social media. So at Bastien Physio, Bastien Physio. Otherwise, they can call the clinic. BastienPhysio.com is where you can find all that information. Or just come to Bourget. It's a small town. You'll see my signs right away. It'd be great to have you guys over at the clinic, and
Marc Bastien from Bastien Physiotherapy. Thanks for being on the Clarence-Rockland Guide.
Well, thank you very much for having me.